This is a fan-generated show. If you'd like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our new Rumble channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. Tonight, Fauci Unmasked. With us this evening, and back by popular demand, Peter Barry Chowka, an investigative reporter and many other things. Peter, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Jamie. Great to see you again.
Fantastic. Barry, some very interesting developments. One could also use the word disturbing. When it comes to Dr. Fauci, why don't we begin with this? Is the cat out of the bag?
Well, that may be happening, and we can have some hope. I think we can maybe see the light at the end of the tunnel. Now, of course, Dr. Anthony Fauci has been the face of the government's COVID-19 policy since the beginning, and I've reported extensively about how he's really a Democrat partisan who subtly and then not so subtly undermined everything President Trump was trying to do to fight the pandemic. And now, of course, Fauci's all in for President Biden. He's been responsible for a lot of what we've seen, the lockdowns, the mask mandates, the authoritarian dictates. But finally, there may be a smoking gun that just may force the invincible medical bureaucrat, Dr. Fauci, into well-deserved retirement. Now, for the longest time since the COVID-19 pandemic began more than a year ago, reputable sources have suggested that the origins of the virus were in the Virology Institute in Wuhan, China, either engineered as a bioweapon or as an experiment that went bad and got loose. And in the past 2 weeks, a number of things have happened to change the status quo of the establishment's disinterest in the causation of the virus. First, Nicholas Wade, who's a 30-year veteran of the New York Times as a science writer and editor, an unimpeachable source, he wrote a lengthy article on his own that examined the subject. And this was picked up by Tucker Carlson at Fox News this week, also building on the work of his colleague at Fox, Steve Hilton. And they Tucker this week focused on Wade's research. And on Tuesday, of course, Fauci was grilled by Republican senators when he appeared at a U.S. Senate hearing. But just to briefly summarize, on Monday, Carlson took note of Fauci's hysterical authoritarianism, he called it, in pushing masks and lockdowns. And he wondered if that behavior for the past year could be a cover for something else. He said, could it be that Tony Fauci is trying to divert attention from himself and his own role in the COVID-19 pandemic? Now, Jamie, this is on the #1 program on all of the mainstream cable television news channels. So, in my opinion, it was a major breakthrough at getting closer to the truth.
Right, and look, it appears, okay, for now, okay, there might be circumstantial evidence, we'll use the word alleged, etc., but it appears that Fauci may have exploited a loophole that allowed him to fund research at the Wuhan lab that is, we know, likely the place where COVID-19 came from. So Fauci had authorized payment for the research experimentation, for 5 years, from 2014 to 2019. The National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, which Fauci runs and has run for decades, put money to a group called the EcoHealth Alliance, run by a man called Dr. Peter Daszak, if I'm pronouncing that right, and who in turn contracted with Dr. Shi Zhengli, the bat lady, to conduct gain-of-function research at Wuhan Lab. So there's some smoke of mirrors going on here, but it appears that Fauci had been involved in funding this research at the Wuhan lab, correct?
Correct. You've done your homework there very well, Jamie. And what this is all about, part of the smoking gun is this research that was going on at the Wuhan lab is what is called gain of function. Now, basically, that's the attempt of scientists to take a naturally occurring virus, in this case, coronavirus, and to enhance it so it would be, in effect, more deadly to humans. It's the weaponization of the coronavirus. And I mean, this is research that you might expect to come out of a place like, dare I say, Germany during World War II. But it went on in China, and it was banned. Gain of function research was banned by the Obama administration starting in 2014 because it was considered so dangerous and toxic. And allegedly, Dr. Fauci and his organization, the NIAID at the NIH, which he's directed since 1984, found a third party, as you noted, to continue funding the research at the Wuhan lab. I mean, it's outrageous enough to me to think that the United States National Institutes of Health is funding controversial research in communist China at a virology lab that's basically an arm of the Communist Party of China. So this is so bizarre.
Peter, sorry to interrupt here for a minute, but he's listed in the documentation. He is on paper listed as a funder of this, but he's denying it, right? So there needs to be an investigation.
Well, exactly. I mean, I want to quote Tucker Carlson again, because although the left hates him, he is considered by many fair-thinking individuals to be an unimpeachable source himself. And he said that this proves that this research went on there and that Fauci is responsible. That's pretty close to a direct quote. And yes, there is documentary evidence in the peer-reviewed scientific literature that the NIH and Fauci funded these experiments in Red China, according to the published research. So there's no question about it. Now, we still say alleged because this has not been adjudicated. And then, as you noted, on Tuesday, when Dr. Fauci testified before a Senate committee, and several Republicans, including Senator Rand Paul, questioned him deeply on this. And he denied, I assume under oath, that he was funding, or the NIH was funding this research, but he's splitting hairs. It reminded me of Bill Clinton during the impeachment from Monica Lewinsky, saying it depends on what the definition of is. This is a very similar thing. It's what these guys do, these bureaucrats. Yeah. Fauci is a bureaucrat. He is a hack. He is not a clinical physician. And when people say, oh, he's brilliant, he's done this, he's done that, no. He's managed bureaucratic agencies his entire professional life, although, of course, he does have a medical doctor degree.
Peter, so these experiments, they're trying to make a virus more lethal, correct?
Yes.
Why would you do such a thing in the first place?
I guess they feel that if they can come up with an experimental, more lethal virus, then they can try to look for a cure in case someone somewhere, some country or player on down the line tries to come up with this to attack a country or a people or whatever. I mean, it's bizarre.
Yeah. Wait, that's the good interpretation.
Yes.
But if there is malice and evil in certain men's hearts, there could be something very diabolical happening here.
Well, let me break some news right now, Jamie. The plot thickens further. It was 5 days ago, as we sit here now, that the leading newspaper in Australia, The Australian, it's the only national newspaper in Australia with over 2.5 million circulation, they broke a story which has gotten no coverage here in Europe or the United States that I can find, but it's been covered in Asia and in some technical publications. They broke a story that they found documents that Chinese communist scientists floated the idea of a bioweapon to take down the West in 2015. Now, here's a quote from one of their articles in The Australian. Virus Warfare in China Military Documents, that was the title of the article. Chinese military scientists discussed the weaponization of SARS coronavirus 5 years before the COVID-19 pandemic, outlining their ideas in a document that predicted a third world war would be fought with biological weapons. And the Daily Telegraph, which is another Australian newspaper, headlined it this way: "Forget the prospect of war with China. We may already be at war, but simply failed to recognize the weaponry." So this is an incredible development, and I can't believe that it has not gotten any attention here in the American media, either the mainstream media or the alternative or new media, at least to this point.
It's so disturbing and also disheartening, because we can just see so much evil happening here with these diabolical characters and systems like Communist China and people like Fauci. And yet our media, it's a disgrace. But thank God for people like Tucker Carlson. So, and like Peter Chowka. Peter, so these are like what, I'm just a bit stuck on this point. We've got some of the most dangerous experiments ever conducted in human history, arguably. They're doing all this stuff in the Wuhan lab. And what kind of precautions would a communist regime like China be taking to make sure that nothing bad happened in that lab?
Well, apparently they didn't take sufficient precautions, because look what happened. Either wittingly or accidentally, the COVID-19 virus, probably weaponized through these experiments, got out of that lab probably in late 2019, and it infected the world. It has basically brought the world to its knees, and it represents really the greatest potential litigation case for responsibility in the history of the world. But again, it's not being recognized for that by the leaders now of the United States, mainly the Biden administration and permanent medical war bureaucrats like Fauci, who are there to serve globalists, transnationalists, and even the communist Chinese, if necessary. They're all in bed together because they don't see any real problem with communist China. They've got the blinders on to the authoritarian fascistic regime that communist China is. And of course, the Chinese have covered up what they did. They have not allowed independent investigators into the Wuhan lab until recently, a kind of World Health Organization group that was not disposed to really get to the bottom of this. And most of the evidence has probably been deep-sixed by now anyway. So we may never get to the bottom of how this really happened, what went on there.
Yeah.
And good luck holding communist China responsible for what they've unleashed on the world in the last 14, 15 months. And it's not over yet.
Yeah, and who on our side actually enabled and facilitated it all? I've been really researching who the investigative team that's been put together to look into where this virus came from. And the people that are on this investigative team are very suspect in terms of whether they should be the people investigating it, because the whole thing is just a tragic comedy, and if something very dark is going on, right?
Right. And it's just like when the report surfaced 5 or 6 days ago from Australia that I cited, a day or two later, the communist Chinese news agencies poo-pooed it, denied it, claimed it was fake news. But it's based on papers and a book in Chinese that were published in 2015. There's no doubt about that. The authors' names are listed, and they're all associated, these scientific authors, with the Communist Party of China. So it's a smoking gun that's gone hot, and we shall see where it goes. But it's very significant. And, well, in fact, today, even on Fox News during Bret Baier's show, there was part 2 of an ongoing series on this very issue. How did this start? Did it come out of the Wuhan lab? So Fox News, I don't think, is going to let this go. You have some decent Republican senators like Rand Paul committed to really holding Fauci's feet to the fire here. They've called him a liar for his testimony in the Senate committee on Tuesday. So I hope, Jamie, I pray that the truth will out, because it really deserves to, because millions of people have died, lives have been uprooted, economies ruined, and we got President Joe Biden as a result of this as well.
Absolutely. You know, just during these very disheartening, scary times, Peter, where we see so little justice, so much injustice, we just pray, like when I was watching this and researching, it's like, oh man, just, it would be such a blessing if some good people could really look into this. You know, let's just finish with this. You're an expert on Fauci. This is nothing surprising in terms of his past, you know, all that stuff he was involved in terms of the whole AIDS thing. Very, very scary record of his. I've said this before on the show, even with just personal disposition, our intuition, I just have to say, if I was, let's say, organizing a party in my own home and I found out Donald Trump was coming, I mean, I would just be ecstatic to when you just think of Donald Trump, to have a person like that in your home and everything that he is. It would just be such an honor, but you can picture a kind of very fun, lovable, great time. I'm saying that, imagine you find out that Fauci is showing up to your house. I would probably try to get, yeah, or tell him that I've moved out of town or something. There's just something about this guy that gives you the creeps, and all of your research throughout the years has suggested that the creeps that one feels are justified, right?
And I'm sorry to have to say this, Jamie, but in my years of investigating, researching, interviewing some of the top medical bureaucrats, including at the National Institutes of Health, you know, colleagues of Dr. Fauci's, I found, in my opinion, I'm sorry to have to say this, most of them were creeps. They were political hacks. They were not clinicians who were humanitarians. I knew plenty of them, people on the order of like Dr. Linus Pauling, who was not a medical doctor, but he was a great humanitarian who tried to help people with inexpensive nutritional supplements like vitamin C. You know, people like Fauci, his career has been about promoting extensive and harmful vaccines. I mean, I read an article today, research that 10% of the population, at least, Jamie, in this country suffers from a serious immunological disorder like type 1 diabetes or Crohn's disease. And they are especially at risk to take any of these vaccines, but they are not being given an out. And Joe Biden said today that everyone has to take the vaccine. We've seen the emergence of the immunity passports. Our feet are going to be held to the fire on that. And you can blame people like Fauci, if not Fauci himself, for much of all of this, quote, scientific, unquote, basis for all this madness, Jamie.
Thank you, Peter. I was wondering when Biden said that, like how now, so if you had a vaccine, you can take off your mask, but if you haven't, you better keep it on. So we live in the United States of America. How are they gonna prove that exactly? Oh, I guess I'm gonna have to show my papers while I'm walking down the street. I wonder what that reminds me of in terms of what kind of system we're gonna be under. I was also wondering, Peter, who are the Karens gonna scream at now in terms of for people to put their mask on? That's gonna be very interesting. Peter, thank you so much for coming on the Glazov Gang and telling us all about this Fauci character and what might be coming up.
Thank you, Jamie. It's always great to compare notes with you.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us this evening. Please keep in mind, due to YouTube persecution, we've just had enough of the censorship and all the other stuff they're doing to us. We've gone over to Rumble. Go to Rumble, search the Glazov Gang, subscribe to the Glazov Gang, and make sure you click on instant notifications. We'll see you soon. Good night.